What's up? Welcome into your Daily Buckeye Blitz for a Friday. Finally, freaking Friday. Soon it will be a football Friday. A few more weeks away. Can't wait. It is August 11th, 2023. I'm your host, Joe from the Buckeye Cast, just popping in to say hello. That's it. I'm out of here. Just kidding. No, it's good to see you guys. Appreciate everybody taking the ride with me. We have really exploded this YouTube channel and the podcast. I don't mean to ignore the podcast listeners. You guys are awesome too. All the downloads have like tripled since this time last year. It's insane. It makes me want to burp. I won't do that again. So I appreciate everybody. Don't forget, please like, subscribe, share, download, all the things. If you're watching on YouTube, don't be afraid to hop over into your podcast app, subscribe there too. I greatly appreciate that. And the buckeyecast.com. Don't forget about that. Support the show. Get yourself some Buckeye gear. Get yourself a Buckeye Cast merch, a little logoed shirt, hat, whatever. Goes a long way. Trust me. All right, today. So I'm taking a break from the freshman focuses and the player focus shows, and we got a few requests over the last few months about kind of explaining some of the positions and their responsibilities, body types. So like today we're talking D-line. So I'm going to get into all four. The Buckeyes obviously run a four down front. So we're going to talk about the tackles, nose guard, the ends. We're going to talk about strengths, weaknesses, what they're supposed to do, responsibilities, all that stuff. So I'll try and hit on each position group over the coming weeks and months. So we've done some previous ones like on the O line. So this is kind of more just general football 101 type stuff. If you guys already are aware of this stuff or you already know, I apologize for reiterating it, but there are people like new fans, especially to the game, young and old, that maybe don't know all of the intricate details, like what each D lineman is supposed to do on a given play, or where they line up even. Some people don't know that. So this is kind of the, like I said, football 101. So appreciate everybody and your patience. So let's get into it. We're talking D-line. Okay, so let's talk about from like a 30,000 foot view. What is a four down front on the D-line, like the Buckeyes run? So a team relies heavily on four down defensive linemen to get the job done up front. This means stopping the run. They can potentially be more effective than a 3-4 defense, going with four down linemen that utilizes 2D tackles that shift and stunt to confuse the offensive line's blocking scheme. If defensive tackles in a four down front can make plays against the run, that's great. But many four down front defenses are set up to allow the middle linebacker to make tackles. So he comes in, they occupy space, linebacker comes in, wraps up. The four down front defense can be effective against the passing game as well. In a 3-4 defense, they will usually need to blitz a linebacker, at least one, to get pressure on the quarterback. But in a four down front, like the Buckeyes run, you can leave that job up to the D-line and free up the linebackers to have other responsibilities like pass coverage. All four defensive linemen must be good pass rushers. That's why you see a lot of times Mike Hall or Tyleek getting into the backfield, making plays. That's what Larry Johnson loves, especially the D ends. They're usually a little smaller and quicker, than D ends in the 3-4. A four down front can get pressure on the quarterback using only four down linemen is a nightmare for offensive coordinators. So if they can get pressure without bringing an extra linebacker as a blitzer, that's really key because that leaves those responsibilities for a linebacker to do something else. So one of the weaknesses of a 4-down front, it is kind of conservative by nature, but when you look at today's modern offenses, good quarterbacks have a much easier time spotting weaknesses. Player assignments are more predictable and less muddied up by the defensive alignments. It's also easier to get mismatches and exploit the defense. It's easier to guess what the defense is going to do with a 4-down front. So let's define the 4 positions here. So you get your D tackle. That's usually you can sometimes call him a strong side D tackle. He's the 3 tech. So the 3 technique, outside shade of the guard on the strong side. Okay, I'll see if I can get some graphics here to illustrate what I'm talking about. So 3 tech, outside shade on the guard on the strong side. So the strong side is whatever side the tight end lines up on. So he's typically your best defensive lineman and must be able to command a double team from the offensive line. So think of Tyleek. Tyleek Williams is typically your strong side D tackle, 3 tech. Now, nose guard or weak side tackle, they call it. He lines up in the 1 tech. That's 1 technique. He is a weak side shade on the center. So your best defensive lineman or a wrestler type of guy, he's usually a little smaller, but is quick and able to cause problems up front. Think of Ty Hamilton or Mike Hall last year. He played the nose guard when he was healthy. Then you got the ends. The strong side end is different from a weak side end. The strong side is bigger and stronger of the 2. He aligns in what they call a 9 technique on a tight end, outside shade, or a 5 technique where there's no tight end on the strong side. So the ends are kind of tilted at a 45-degree angle to help spill the football inside. Think of JT. JT is a strong side end. He's a little bigger and stronger than Jack, right? Jack Sawyer. So weak side end is faster, more athletic of the 2. If you have one guy that's incredibly athletic but doesn't really know the playbook too well or doesn't handle a lot of responsibilities, this is where you put him. Not saying that Jack Sawyer is a moron or anything like that, but you just cut him loose and he can wreck shop. So think of Jack. Zach Harrison last year also was the weak side end. And Jack will be back there this year, thank God. So let's go a little deeper on the D tackles. They're typically your biggest body defenders on the field, so they can take on the interior of the O-line. They often find themselves double teamed against O-linemen because this is where a lot of the run plays go, right up the gut. Defensive tackles usually line up somewhere over the guard, either straight on or over one of the shoulders. So with this, the tackles are typically responsible for rushing through either the A or the B gap. Again, I'll try and get some graphics on screen while I'm telling you these things. The main job of tackle is obviously to clog up running lanes in the interior of the O-line. So by doing that, they allow linebackers and safeties to get free, come off their blocks, and make tackles on the ball carriers. Against a pass, defensive tackles are responsible for getting into the backfield as quickly as possible, pushing their guy back into the quarterback's lap and cause disruption. While defensive tackles traditionally don't register big sack numbers, they're able to get into the backfield successfully. They can create sacks for defensive ends and linebackers. And if the quarterback scrambles out of the pocket, there's usually somebody there waiting on him. So a solid defensive tackle can be a game changer for the D line. Nose tackles. Nose tackles are essentially a type of defensive tackle, a little more specialized type of tackle. They're even larger, more traditional, larger than traditional tackles, more useful against the run than they are against the pass. main job, clog up the direct interior of the formation, taking on as many blockers as possible. So when you hear the term like space eater, this guy eats up blockers, that's a nose. While the nose will have some role in the passing game, they're even less likely to get sacks. So they often line up directly over the head of the center or shade to one of his shoulders. So sometimes the nose tackle will line up on the inside shoulder of one of the guards too. That makes his responsibility the A gap all the time. So on defensive ends, these are kind of the glamour position, right? Because they get all the sacks typically. They line up further outside the line of scrimmage, outside the formation. They're still big players, but typically smaller than D tackles, of course. The main attribute that separates them from D tackles is that they're quick, nimble, and athletic, right? Defensive ends need the athleticism so they can face off against big offensive tackles. Because of the size difference, D ends must focus on avoiding blocks instead of just blasting through them. Like defensive tackles, they just come right at the blockers. So the D ends do this by having a good stance. You got to have a quick first step, that get off. You got to be fast, and you have to use evasive moves like swim moves, spin moves, use hand fighting techniques. And those are the techniques that they rep the most in practice. Those shedding block moves, getting off of tackles. The D ends typically line up around the offensive tackles, possibly off the tight end, and depending if there's a tight end on their side of the field. In the Ohio State defense, where you use a strong side and a weak side end, you can swap the players based on how the offense lines up. Either way, they line up over a tackle or across one of his shoulders. The defensive ends, their responsibility, they have two main jobs. On passing play, their job is to get into the backfield, cause as much disruption as they can. The coach can literally just let them loose on passing plays with the ultimate goal, obviously, to get to the quarterback. Strip sack, rearrange his face, whatever, twist his helmet around, whatever it takes. While the DNs get a ton of attention, depending on how successfully they rush the quarterback, they're crucial to the running game too. So on running plays, their main responsibility is called outside contain. Their goal is to not let the ball carrier get to the outside of them. The reason for this is that defensive ends are the last player along the line of scrimmage to the sideline. So if a ball carrier is able to get outside of the defensive end and past him, they'll have a ton of greenery, plenty of turf and running room out there. Plus, the ball carriers will often face much smaller guys like corners and safeties, maybe outside linebackers, that might have a hard time making tackles in space, on a running back or whoever. So it doesn't mean that defensive ends must take every single tackle on their own, make every tackle, but when the ball carrier comes their way, his job is to force the runner back towards the middle of the field where the rest of his buddies are, right? And the linebackers and guys that can wrap up and make the tackle. So the defensive end can do this. His technique is to shuffle outside and angle his body so the runner has to cut back inside to avoid getting tackled in the backfield. So defensive end can never overcommit on a play and, come down inside and then get juked and gets run around to the outside. You cannot overcommit. That's why you see or you hear a lot of coaches say, set the edge, and the DN's job is to set that edge and not let anybody else around it. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you guys got any other questions, any other positions you'd like me to hit on. I can just put them in order of priority, however you like, and we'll get to them eventually. So appreciate your patience and sticking with me. As always, hit me up if you got questions or comments or other topics. If there are topics you guys want to talk about, hit me up. Talk to you later. Go Bucks.